Good evening, race fans, and welcome back to Season 9 of the Attrition Sim Race Campus Oval Series. Tonight, we are here over in Pensacola, Florida for round 4 of the season, which frankly is just a little bit of a hop, skip, and a leap away from the USA International Speedway that we were at last week back at Lakeland, Florida. But of course, tonight we're here at a bit of a shorter track. We are at the Five Flags Speedway. This track has a whole lot of history to it. It has been hosting the Snowball Derby every year since the late 80s and still considered to be one of the most prestigious events for late model racing in the United States. But alas, we are not doing late model racing anymore, race fans. We are here with the street stock, a bit of a heavier vehicle and a bit less horsepower under the hood. So it'll definitely be interesting to see how these drivers are able to take these not necessarily easier to drive cars out onto the track, but definitely a bit of a different style to them than what you would expect out of late model racing. That said, of course, as always, if you want to come join Attrition Sim Race Campus and come out and race with us, be sure to check them out at www.asrcracing.com or head on over to @ASRC Racing on Twitter or simply look them up on the iRacing League directory. The only requirement to join the league is to be a clean and respectful driver, and always looking for new folks. You don't have to wait at all to join in. Only 4 rounds into the 12 round long season, so little bit of ways into the season, but still plenty of time to get your name up there on the scoreboard. Looking at the standings coming into the night, looks like we have 14 drivers so far that have put down at least one race into the standings. Currently, Travis Sukup coming into this race leading with 2 wins under his belt, with his teammate of Tyler McRae just behind him by just 3 points. So championship battle is going to be pretty spicy here tonight. We may be early on into the season, but there is still plenty of time for things to get all sorts of shaken up. And like looking behind Sukup and McRae up there in first and second in the point standings, third, fourth, and fifth are all just 5 points apart from each other. So all throughout the field there are battles going on and stories to be paying attention to. That said, it does look like qualifying is just about in the books, so how about we take it down trackside for our starting lineup here tonight. Starting out on the pole in that number 145 Dropping Bombs race and entry, that is the 145 of Travis Sukup, the driver who has picked up 2 wins in a row in the past 2 races. Is outside in that number 10, also driving for Dropping Bombs Racing. That's the number 10 of Steven Rex. Back in P number 3, the number 99 driver out of Chesterfield, Virginia. That's going to be Tyler McRae, the 3rd driver for Dropping Bombs Racing. Back in P number 4, driving that number 93 Golf entry, that is going to be the number 93 of Jason Gardner. Back in P number 5, going to be the number 85 of Brian Sabelski, rolling out onto the track here tonight. 4-time champion here with the Oval Series in that number 85 machine. Starting a little bit further back in the field, but he certainly is not going to be stuck back there for long, knowing him. Up in the 6th position, going to go back to the other Jason here, the league Jason, and Jason starting nose to tail. That's going to be the 70 of Jason Mong, rolling off in P number 6. Back in P number 7, it is fittingly the 007 of Nico Morelli for Morelli Motorsports, driving in the Attrition Sim Race Campus paint scheme. Going to be rolling out in P number 7. And finally, the last car to sign up on the entry sheet does not look like he has actually made the field here tonight. That's going to be the 38 of Brandon Feeney. So it's looking like the verdict is going to be 7 cars on the track here tonight. 100 laps up for grabs here at the Five Flags Speedway. iRacing.com pace cars off, and we are going green flag racing side by side down into turn number 1. Looks like a pretty solid start by everyone all around the field, and Steven Rex, a little bit of a bump against the outside wall coming out of turn number 2 there, but he is absolutely keeping pace with these leaders. And a little bit loose off the corner for Sukup. That's going to allow Rex to be scored as the race leader that time by, but he's not going to hold on to the position for very long in that 145. Steven Rex doing a very good job of hanging on the outside here. The past couple of races we've seen the outside line generally not the place you want to be, not a good place to be building up speed around the track unless it's later on in the race. But sure enough, looks like Rex is making that outside line work very well for him here tonight. But of course, we saw what happened last week at the USA International Speedway. 2 teammates getting together in the final 20 laps of the race, wrecking each other, not totaling each other's cars. Both drivers were still able to get back out on the speedway and keep on racing, but drivers in P1 and P2 taking each other out, and teammates at that, is not how you want the race to be going. And Tyler McRae getting incredibly loose off the corner there, and that number 99 managed to hold on to it, but just barely. That could have been a little bit of a recipe for disaster just like that. Might be inflicting a little bit of the commentator's curse down here on these dropping bombs racing entries, and if I do, well, I would say I'm sorry, but I'm really not. It's kind of funny watching these people wreck, but that's just my 2 cents. Generally, the closest battle on the speedway is the battle between these 3 lead lap cars. Sukup, McRae, Rex, all under a little bit of a blanket, and then throwing it further back is going to be the number 85 of Brian Sabelski. Sure enough, I said he wouldn't be stuck back in the 6th position for very long, and here he is already up in P number 4 in that number 85 machine. Going into this season, being the defending champion, Sabelski absolutely has his work cut out for him, especially since last season Tyler McRae in that number 99 actually managed to get more wins than him throughout the course of season 8, but with how the drop weeks factored in and the fact that McRae was absent for a couple of weeks allowed Sabelski to edge the championship over him just by a couple of points. It really was down to the wire. Now both drivers having a clean slate as of just a couple of weeks ago, and Sabelski coming into this race is back in P number 6 in the point standings. He was unable to attend the event back at the USA International Speedway last week, so drop weeks will be, of course, a very big factor, especially as we get later into the season. Like I said, 4 drop weeks at your disposal out of 12 weeks total for this entire season, so only everyone's 8 best races are going to be counted. So definitely something to keep in mind. If you do have a bad race, it's not the end of the world, and sometimes consistency is just what it's going to come down to. Speaking of consistencies though, last time by, Jason Gardner just set his fastest lap of the race in that number 93 machine that actually looks like tied his previous lap by as well, and sure enough, that time by again setting the same lap time. So definitely a lot of consistently coming out of that number 93. Jason Gardner, the driver and also the administrator that is doing a lot of the behind the scenes work to make the ASRC Oval Series what it is. That number 93 driver has been here since the beginning of the Oval Series. This whole thing was his idea, and now here we are at the Five Flags Speedway. Call it about 2 years and maybe 3 weeks or so since the ASRC Oval Series first started, so things have been going on for a long time now. Been in a couple of different forms. We originally started with the street stocks, had the street stocks going for a full year here with the league, and then swapped it out for the NASCAR modifieds. And then as we started broadcasting it back in season number 7, the late models. But now here we are with the street stock, and the street stock's what we're going to use for the whole rest of the season and all of next season. And then once season 10 next season comes to its conclusion, it will be put up to a vote to see if the ASRC Oval Series sticks with the street stock or potentially tries out something new. But I'll tell you what, McRae, Sabelski, Gardner, Morelli, Mong, all of these drivers are drivers that have been racing with Attrition for pretty much the entirety of the existence of the Oval Series. I know Gardner, Sabelski, and Morelli for sure were all here even before the Oval Series was founded, competing in the Road Series and as well as competing in the iRacing official team events. So whole lot of history behind this community. A battle breaking out back in the back. Jason Mong getting around that 007 of Nico Morelli. Morelli up on the high line. Looks like he might have had a little bit of trouble, and Mong getting really loose off the corner there, but managing to hold on to it in that number 70 machine. And that 007 of Morelli is going to be going way up high to try and stay out of the danger there. And while it is going to keep him in this race, it is going to cause him to lose a bit of ground on Mong. And you can see Morelli getting very loose through the corners here. Five Flags Speedway comes in at 15 degrees of banking, which isn't the most amount of banking in the world, but for a short track like this, only half a mile or 0.8 kilometers in length, 15 degrees of banking allows these drivers to stay on the throttle a lot more than they can on a couple of other half-mile short tracks on the schedule here this season. And you can definitely see how it's affecting these drivers on corner exit, especially carrying all of that momentum can really throw these heavy cars out of balance. And that is definitely going to be affecting these drivers' tires, but if this ends up being a caution-free race, which there is a very good chance that it will be, that might not be too big of a deal. But again, how that 007 is sliding through these corners, Nico Morelli may be having a bit of tire troubles come to the end of this race, because we've still got 3/4 of the way to go through here tonight. There's still a long way to go for all these drivers. Fuel may end up being an issue as well, so that is something we will have to keep an eye on. Fueling in these cars is incredibly slow, so I would not be surprised if we end up seeing drivers taking tires during their fuel stops. Of course, no one is going to be foolish enough to take a full, complete refill on gas here tonight, but a full tank of gas in the street stock takes about 45 seconds to fill up, which is a huge deal when these drivers are currently setting 18.2 seconds laps. So that's almost 3 laps to take a full tank of fuel under green flag conditions. Of course, that doesn't sound all that terrible when you compare it to, say, your daily driver, but out on the racetrack, especially in some of the other cars out there, you can have a full tank of fuel in less than 10 seconds. So 45 is a huge deal. And definitely gonna want to make sure that these drivers have their pit settings set up correctly, because we have seen mistakes on pit road, not even necessarily mistakes by the drivers of like passing their pit stalls or committing a penalty of some sort, but mistakes like having the wrong options checked in their pit settings have costed some of these drivers race wins before. So there's always the potential for someone to not be paying attention in the heat of the moment and do a little bit of a mistake and get themselves trapped on pit lane for a lot longer than they intend to be. But currently 32 laps in and currently watching the closest battle on the speedway. This is the battle for P number 4 between Sabelski and Gardner. Two drivers that have been here for the league for many years. And of course, as always, Mr. Brian Sabelski Twitch streaming his point of view of this race. So if you'd be interested in seeing the point of view of one of the drivers out here on the track here tonight, definitely be sure to check out Brian's stream at twitch.tv/Neon Tiger. Pretty much streams all of his races on iRacing, and he streams his perspective of the Oval Series every single Monday night. So definitely be sure to go out there and give the drivers of this league the love they deserve for the work they put on, both making all these races possible and in turn making this broadcast possible in the first place. Sure enough though, Jason Gardner is going to be making the pass on Sabelski. Whether or not that lasts remains to be seen. There always is a little bit of strategy that has to come into play with these longer races, and it's entirely possible that Sabelski sees how hard Gardner is pushing, because Gardner still setting some really fast lap times. Might just say, you know what, I'm gonna let him go by me and I'm gonna let him burn up his tires. Still a long way to go though, so we will have to see if Sabelski's decision pays off for him. But there is of course always just the option that Gardner simply got the pass and there's not a lot Sabelski could have done about it. Still the closest battle on the speedway though between these two cars. Little bit of a different line being taken around the track by these two. Looking down at the chopper camera on them, you can see Sabelski trying to go a little bit lower on the track than Gardner is. Sabelski has a little bit of a higher corner entry, but then mid-corner he's a lot lower on the track than Gardner is, and sometimes those little bit of differences in line make all the difference. And you can see actually Sabelski closing the gap here in that number 85. You know what they say, if you are driving in the tire tracks of the car in front of you, then you are not overtaking the car in front of you. You have to try something different in some form or another if you want to get around this guy. And you actually saw Sabelski there nearly getting down onto the apron. That could have been a little bit of trouble for that 85. Getting down on the apron, a very easy way to upset the balance of the car, and if you're not careful, send yourself spinning. But an experienced driver like Sabelski probably knows that that is not necessarily the best decision to make. Currently just trying to find a way to close the distance between himself and Gardner and try and execute a pass. We are closing in on the halfway mark of this race, and once we get past lap 50, I would imagine the gloves are going to be coming off for some of these drivers. Sabelski peeking it down low just a little bit, but he's going to back out of it. Not close enough to try and make the overtake happen. But you can see the way he's driving, he is thinking really hard about it. He is really getting ready to just wait for some sort of opportunity, because all it takes is one little slip up, and that's all it takes to make the overtake. Gardner overdriving the corner just a little bit, maybe getting a little loose off a corner exit. That's all it will be at these short distances to make a effective use of another driver's mistake. Just in front of these two, Gardner starting to catch back up to Steven Rex. Rex currently in P number 3 for Droppin' Bombs Racing. He seems to have fallen off from his two teammates. He's currently got a 7-second gap between himself and the leader, even though Sukup and McRae are still pretty much nose to tail nearly. And looks like Rex is going to be keeping it way up high. It looks like he is having a very difficult time keeping the rear end under that number 10 machine of his. pushing a little bit high up into the corner and then getting a little bit loose off. That's going to bump Rex all the way back down to P number 5, just like that. Sabelski and Gardner are going to get around him without any sort of issue. Interesting enough, though, looking at the lap times, Steven Rex set an identical lap time to Travis Sukup, our race leader in that number 10 machine. And not only did he do that, but that was almost 0.2 of a second faster than the lap time that Gardner and Sabelski set. Looks like potentially a little bit of a trouble. Nico Morelli is around on the speedway. That's going to bring out the first caution of the evening on lap number 50. Sure enough, I jinxed it. I said that we weren't going to get any cautions this race. And sure enough, just like that, caution number 1 going to be coming out on the speedway for the driver of the 007 entry. Let's see if we can't take a look back and see what happened to Nico Morelli here. It's not a very conductive view here because you can see that 007 already off the speedway and again already getting really loose here. So let's see if we can't actually take it back an extra lap or so. Try and see if we can't see what happened to that 007 driver. Getting very loose out of turns 3 and 4, but managing to hold on to it and heading down into turns 1 and 2. A little bit of scrape against the outside wall and really loose again, pretty much drifting it through the corner, but he's still got it going. So next time by should be where the incident is. But you can see Morelli really having a hard time holding on to that car, absolutely power sliding it out of 4. And heading back down into turns 1 and 2, another power slide. And it's trying to correct really hard to avoid the outside wall. That's going to send him spinning around and holding it down, letting the leaders go by. No caution, no caution, no caution. He thinks, okay, the track's clear. I'm going to get going again. And that's going to prompt the yellow flag to come out. Let's see if we can't look back at this and maybe get an onboard camera with Mr. Morelli here. Looking at his cockpit camera, a little bit of the way into this incident already. You can see him just trying to hang on to it. Little bit of a scrape against the inside retaining wall. Shifts it in reverse, waits for the track to clear. Backs it up. And just that little bit of motion is what triggered the caution. Because on that little piece of asphalt down there, the iRacing stewards were considering him to not be a hazard to the track. Sure enough, caution number 1 going to come out on the speedway, and it looks like every single car on the field decided to head down to pit lane during that one stop. And this is very interesting because we have some very different pit stop times on here. Looking throughout the field, it's looking like Sukup and McRae had pit times that were half of that of any other car. Sukup and McRae both had pit stops in roughly the 12-second range. Everyone else 23 seconds or more. So it looks like McRae and Sukup might have stopped without taking any sort of tires. That said, pace car is off, green flag back up in the air. Let's see what these drivers have to give for each other, especially with our 2 race leaders being on an alternate strategy here tonight. Almost immediately everyone decides to go single file, probably the best idea. Still halfway of the way left to go through this race, and a little bit of trouble in the back. Steven Rex getting very loose off the corner, and he's going to spin around and gonna bring that 10 to a stop, but not going to bring the caution flag out. That's going to send him all the way back to P number 6 as he gets it rolling again. And up in the front, battles are still breaking out all over the place. The battle for the lead getting pretty heated, and just behind that, Jason Gardner and Jason Mong. As usual, we tend to find these 2 drivers side by side, but that raises the question of how did Gardner fall all the way back to the 5th position when he restarted in 3rd? Not entirely sure on that one, but That just means that that 93 driver has his work cut out for him as he now tries to find his way around his fellow Jason here tonight. Pretty much all of last season in the points championship, these two were side by side, and it feels like every time we talk about either of them in the race, they are also nose to tail, and tonight just continues to prove that theory to remain true. Both Mong and Gardner getting a little bit loose out of turn number 4 there, but keeping it pointed in the right direction. Steven Rex, though, talk about a little bit of an unfortunate way to have that race start. It looks like we actually do have a replay of that incident queued up on our camera feed. So let's take a quick look back at what happened to that driver. Looking down at the driver out of Channahon, Illinois. At number 10, peeking down low to see if he can't get around the 93. Gonna get very loose, try and save it, and just a little bit nudge. Gonna send him not hard into the inside wall at all. Gonna lock it down and keep from collecting any other drivers, but that gonna be what's sending him back almost a full 10 seconds behind any other car in the field. That is a massive deficit to try and make up for the driver of that number 10 machine, and especially a massive deficit to make up when he was already having so many issues with falling off the pace before that caution came out. Looking at the lap times, last time by, Rex set a lap that was 0.3 of a second slower than some of these other cars in the field, so having a bit of handling issues under the hood of that number 10 machine, but he's not out of this race yet, and another caution could potentially give him the opportunity to catch back up to our race leaders and put himself into maybe even a podium position. A little bit further up the field, the battles between the two Jasons is still the closest on the speedway tonight. Jason Mong leading Jason Gardner for 4th and 5th place respectively in that unsponsored number 70 machine. 63 laps is going to be how many are in the book, so drawing into the final quarter of the race in just the next couple of laps. Not a whole lot of time left to get yourself sorted out here tonight. But looking throughout the field, everyone's got themselves relatively spread out here. If we bring out the wide view cam, sure enough, looking around, it looks like pretty much everyone has a fairly even gap between themselves and the other cars. A little bit of trouble for that 70 of Jason Mong, going to be scraping against the outside wall here. That's going to give Gardner a little bit of an opportunity to catch back up, but let's be realistic. Pretty much every single car in this field has scraped the outside wall already at one point, and that was Brian Sabelski being the driver to do it again in that number 85 machine. So even the drivers battling it out in the top 3 having little bits of impacts with the outside wall here tonight. But sure enough, 66 laps in the books now here tonight. Going to be the final remaining third of the race. And it's looking like everyone has got themselves more or less where they feel like they're going to be finishing here tonight. That said, I still am a little bit concerned about Sukup and McRae's pit strategies, because I'm thinking that maybe they underfueled. I'm not certain on that one, so don't quote me on that one, but these 13-second pit times for these two drivers are so substantially shorter than everyone else on the field that they had to have either not taken tires or way underdone their fuel. Whatever it is they've done, though, seems to be working for the two of them, because both of them have built up a fairly considerable gap from the rest of the field, especially Mr. Sukup with a nearly 3-second lead to any other car on the track. Just 30 laps to go, and we could potentially be crowning the driver of that number 145 as a 3-time winner here in season number 9. A 3-time winner back-to-back at that, but I shouldn't be tooting his horn too early. There's still always the potential for something to go very, very wrong. And speaking about that, given that little bit of a threat here, and there are 2 lapped cars battling it out just in front of them. That is not what you want to see if you are the driver of the number 145. 2 cars duking it out for position, because if either one of them makes contact, either one of them has a little bit of an incident, that could be collecting you as well. That's that 007 of Nico Morelli just in front of them, the driver that brought out the first caution. Still looking like he has some handling issues under the hood of that car, so it does not look like he was able to really get anything situated down under there with his pit stop. Looking to try and get around that 10 of Steven Rex, though, even though it is not for position. Sure enough, further up in the field, the 2 Jason's going to be changing position. Gardner managing to get around Mong. Mong going way up high in the corner, and that's going to allow Gardner to get back up into P number 4 as we cross the line. 25 to go is going to be the distance. So now we are in the final chapters of this event here tonight. Travis Sukup working his way through the lap cars fairly well, got around that 007 of Morelli without any issues, and now he has a teammate in front of him in that number 10 in the form of Steven Rex. Gonna be interesting to see what Rex's reaction is going to be, because he has been having a bit of a rough race. Will he just pull it aside and let Sukup sail on by, or is he going to try and fight to stay on the lead lap for the slight off chance that a caution could come back out in the next 23 laps? Sure enough, Sukup is closing the distance on that number 10 machine, but it's not looking like he's having too much pressure be put on that number 10 driver. Riding down with Steven Rex, going to be riding down on that rear view camera on there of the number 10. You can see the race leader of the 145 right behind him. And down into turns 1 and 2. Sukup taking a bit of a different line from Rex, and looks like Sukup kind of just cruising along, maybe playing it a little bit safe after all. A nearly 4-second buffer between himself and McRae is no laughing matter here tonight. Rex getting a bit loose off the corner. But Sukup's just kind of cruising around now in that number 145 machine. And looking a little bit further back, Tyler McRae really pushing in that gray and red 99 to try and catch back up to his teammate and try and contest for the lead of this race. But he's just not setting the lap times necessary to do it. And as we dip below 20 to go, McRae might need a little bit of a miracle to catch back up to this race leader. A little bit further back in the field, the battle between Mong and Gardner still ongoing. The 2 Jasons being relentless. Might not be fair to say that there's only room in this town for one of them, especially since we're not coming back to this town for the rest of the season. But these 2 drivers certainly treating it like there can only be one Jason, and both of them really striving to prove which one of them is the best of the 2 Jasons. Currently, Gardner is in the lead of this battle, but these 2 have been trading positions back and forth all race long. As we get near the line for 15 to go, it does look like last time by, Gardner set a faster lap time than Mong, and as we cross the line there, it's the same story. Gardner setting a faster lap time than Mong, but only just barely. There's only about roughly a thousandth of a difference between these two drivers in terms of lap time. So both drivers are really pushing their cars hard here, and both drivers still have pretty decent speed under their belts. Actually, looking at it, it looks like the two of them set faster lap times than our race leader of Travis Sukup. So Sukup, he did manage to get around his teammate of Steven Rex, so he does have a clean racetrack ahead now. Not a single thing to really worry about. He just has to cruise through the last 12 laps and hope and pray that nobody brings out a caution, because if a caution comes out, Sukup is suddenly going to be having a much more contested win here at the Five Flags Speedway. Currently, the closest battle on the speedway between Mong and Gardner still has almost 7/10 of a second between it. So there's still a couple, call it maybe 3 or 4 car lengths, maybe even 5 between these two drivers. So it's looking like the chances of a yellow affecting Sukup are pretty slim. But then again, that first caution that we had come out earlier tonight was a single car incident. So it's not safe to completely rule it out, but the big double high fives are up in the air. Only 10 laps left to go for Travis Sukup for Dropping Bombs Racing. Just has to get through these last couple of laps, and he will be putting on his third crown of the season, getting that third trophy. And what a run Sukup has been putting on for these past couple of weeks. He's been a driver that's been here with Attrition for a couple of seasons now, and every single season he just kept getting podium after podium after podium, but he was never able to take home the checkered flag. And then just like that, for the past 2 weeks, he's gotten not only his first win of the entire time in the Oval Series, but to get them back to back and now looking to try and make it 3 wins back to back in that 145 is a very impressive feat by that Dropping Bombs Racing driver. Coming on the front stretch, going to be making it 6 laps to go now. Not a whole lot of time left. Everyone throughout the field looking to be playing it fairly safe here tonight. McRae, Sabelski, Gardner, Mong, your top 5 drivers, the last 5 cars on the lead lap. It's not looking like Mong has any risk of going a lap down, since they are setting 18-second lap times, so Sukup would have to make up 10 seconds of time in these next 5 laps to potentially put that 70 car a lap down. So I don't think that is going to be an issue. And looking back at the battle with Mong and Gardner, Mong is starting to fall back. He is losing a little bit of pace, not being able to catch up to that number 93 machine. But 4 laps to go, still time for things to happen, especially as Jason Gardner has that 007 right in front of him, and that 007 is going to get really loose coming out of turn number 4. Really having a hard time keeping the rear end of that car down underneath him, and that probably gave Mr. Gardner a little bit of a scare there. 2 laps to go is going to be the distance. Just one more time around the speedway for Sukup to be safe from a caution, and looks like everyone has their cars gathered up beneath them. White flag up in the air. Even if a wreck happens now, there is not going to be a yellow flag. And sure enough, just like that, Mr. Travis Sukup in the number 145 machine is going to be taking home his 3rd ever win here with the ASRC Oval Series, and his 3rd win back to back to back here tonight. Sure enough, pulling it down to the front stretch and trying to see if he can't give us a donut here tonight. Trying to do his best to do a little bit of a burnout. We got part of one. That's half the battle right there. So don't go anywhere, race fans. We will be back in just a moment with interviews with your top three finishers here tonight. So don't go anywhere, race fans, and we'll be right back. Alrighty, and welcome back, race fans, and welcome back, Mr. Travis Sukup. You've made it three in a row now. You've gone from a very long, call it probably 3 season long streak of being able to get consistent podiums and not being able to get a win to getting three back to back to back. How are you feeling now that you've got your third trophy under your belt here with the ASRC Oval Series?
Pretty lucky, I guess you'd say.
Well, luck or not, you sure have been making something work for you in that number 145 machine. Gotten 3 wins under your belt. Next week, we're heading over to the Myrtle Beach Speedway, which is a track that honestly is not all too different from this one. You feeling like heading into next week, you might be able to make that number 4?
I mean, I'm gonna try, but I think my luck will probably run out now.
Well, that remains to be seen. You never know. Could certainly happen, and definitely doing a good job representing the Dropping Bombs racing team out there. But of course, before I let you go celebrate getting 3 wins in a row now, the microphone's all yours. Anyone you like to thank on the side of that 145 for getting you your third trophy here?
Same as always. Tyler's been babysitting me through here, and Steve's been helping me. The two of those between the two of those is really helping out. Having a lot of fun too.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out as always. Always a blast seeing you out there on the track, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
All right, thank you for what you do.
Good deal. And finishing back into P number 2, doing perhaps a little bit of a repeat of last week. Mr. Tyler McRae, you had a whole lot of speed under your belt all night tonight, but it just was not enough to take home that win. How are you feeling now that everything is said and done here tonight and you've got yourself on the podium yet again?
I'm feeling good, man. I'm happy for Mike. He put it on us like big time. He was running about a tenth faster after we put on those tires and that caution, and I had nothing for him. I thought Brian was gonna come get me for a little bit. I kept hitting the wall for some reason, and he got a little close for a little while. I thought we were gonna have a fun race at the end there. Um, Glad to see all these guys out here, and hopefully some of them get a little quicker and have more fun.
Good deal. That always sounds like a plan. What do you think might have had to have played out differently in this race to try and take home the win from Sukup here tonight?
I had to be faster. I thought I had something for him at the beginning of the race, but Steve was on his outside. He's always, Mike's always a little loose in the beginning. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna be pretty good. And then next thing you know, he just started walking away, and that was over.
Sometimes that's just how it goes, but either way, you still had a very fast car here tonight, and another podium, another P2 is definitely a great place to be early on in this season. Heading out next week to the Myrtle Beach Speedway. How are you feeling heading down to the great old South Carolina?
I don't have a lot of time here, and in iRacing there, but it's a fun track. Um, We'll see what we'll do. I mean, we'll have to work on the setup. I struggled working on this setup today. I shared a couple of them, but I shared exactly what I ran. Um, but we'll see. I'm sure I'll be able to find something there and we'll have fun time.
Sounds like a great plan, but of course, as always, thank you for coming out. Is there anyone you'd like to thank for getting that number 99 on the podium here again tonight?
Definitely. I want to thank ASRC for putting up the races and for your broadcast. I always enjoy going back and watching, seeing maybe what I did good or what I didn't do good. All the guys are dropping bombs. We have a blast. We have a good time talking in this race, but we run races all week together. And I really appreciate their friendship. And simspeedshop.com for all the iRacing goodies.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, Tyler, and I look forward to seeing you again over at Myrtle Beach.
We'll see you there. Thank you.
And finally, rounding out our podium here tonight, Mr. Brian Sabelski. It feels like it has been a little bit too long since you've been up here talking to me. How are you feeling now that everything's said and done and you've got another podium under your belt here this season?
I'm doing okay. Tires kind of fell off there about the last 10 laps. I think I overdrove the front and just kind of finally gave out. Was a little bit sad about the caution because I had a strategy that would have worked, but hey, caution throws everything to chaos, and it's just the way it is. Yeah, it's just one of those things that you do what you can. And sometimes it's not good enough.
I think sometimes that just sums up racing as a whole, especially with that pit strategy. Sometimes it's the best laid plans that tend to fall apart when you throw in the element of chaos. But either way,
Yes.
still getting on the podium, definitely no laughing matter. That's still a very solid finish in that number 85 machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, pretty good finish.
And next week, heading into Myrtle Beach Speedway, if I remember correctly, which there's a very good chance that I don't, I think this is the first time the Oval Series will have ever been going to Myrtle Beach. So, how are you feeling heading into that?
It'll be interesting. It's a track I've driven before in other series. I like it. Hopefully, it goes better than the last time I was here. Shoot, I'm trying to think. Was it It was Arca. I think I got turned by somebody who was really impatient. So this is a good group of people. I don't really expect that. So that's a little bit of a nice thing to think about. But yeah, hopefully I'm just gonna have a good race next week and don't kill the car on the curbs.
That sounds like a pretty solid plan because those curbs have been known to kill cars both in iRacing and in real life. So
they're not really curbs; they're just like the parking, this concrete parking things that keep you from like driving through the parking lot onto the sidewalk. Yeah, that's pretty much what they are.
yeah, I really want to congratulate the safety official that decided putting those there was a good idea. But
I drove over them once in the practice session and grenaded my engine immediately. That was fun.
sounds about right. So hopefully no one does that in the race next week. But of course, before I let you go and start getting ready for heading down to Myrtle Beach, is there one you'd like to thank for getting that number 85 machine here on the podium tonight?
I was gonna say just thanks to folks in the Coney Setup Shop as always for doing a great job doing setup work. Thanks to everyone hanging out in the stream. Always good to have you. And yeah, that's about it.
Good deal. Well, thank you for coming out, and I look forward to seeing you all making fools of yourself at my home track, where I have extra authority to make fun of you.
Sounds good.
And you heard it here first, race fans. Interviews with your top 3 finishers here tonight, Mr. Travis Sukup, Tyler McRae, Brian Sabelski, bringing it home here at the Five Flags Speedway. Before we send it off, though, go ahead and take a quick gander over at our race results. back in P number 4 and P number 5. Going to be the two Jasons. Gardner bringing it home in 4th in that 93, and Mong rounding out the top 5 in the 70. Then finally rounding out this field, the 10 of Steven Rex for dropping bombs racing. We're coming back home in P number 6, and the 007 of Nico Morelli rounding out this 7-car field here tonight. So this is going to be signing off for the Florida arc, so to speak, of the ASRC Oval Series. Next week, heading up to South Carolina for Myrtle Beach Speedway, which, like I said, is my home track. So I'm personally very excited for that race. I think it will be a fun one. Then looking like we're going to be heading a little bit all over the country for the remainder of the season. Thompson up in the Northeast, Irwindale over in California, Southern National, South Boston up in like the middle area of the East Coast, and then a couple of tracks in North Carolina before we send it to the bull ring for our championship event over in Nevada. So gonna be over all parts of the country here tonight. Definitely should be a fun remainder of the season. But of course, for now, that's all we got here tonight. Thank you all for coming out and supporting the stream and supporting the league. And from everyone here at ASRC and from myself up here in the broadcasting booth, y'all have a good evening, race fans, and we'll see you next week.